Growth mindset is the belief that through learning and mentorship and effort, you can improve your capabilities, you can increase your potential, you can learn and grow. Your mission is your big North Star. Why are you getting up in the morning? And what is it that you would want someone to say about you at your eulogy? What contribution are you hoping to make? So when lawyers and high-stakes professionals are operating in that always-on mode instead, cognitive load becomes chronic. And that leads to decision fatigue, attention fragmentation, and ultimately, yes, burnout.
Welcome and thank you all so much for joining us for another Justia webinar. My name is Nina and I'll be the moderator for today. Now to kick things off, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Jess Sargus. Jess Sargus is a powerhouse keynote speaker, workshop leader, and high-performance coach who helps professionals stop waiting for permission and start leading their lives through bold, strategic action. She is the author of the forthcoming book, Fierce Agency, and the founder of The Legal Athlete, a company dedicated to helping lawyers and high achievers close the gap between their potential and their performance, as well as live in alignment with their boldest goals. The webinar that you're about to watch will be approximately 1 hour, and once that is complete, Jess will be taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions that come up, please click into the Q&A button in the control panel at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and submit your questions, and we will get to those once the presentation is complete. Now, without further ado, here is Jess to discuss the green light method, mastering your mind and your legal practice.
Morning, everyone. Let's start with this. Too many lawyers today are running on empty. They are not doing so because they lack any skill or work ethic, but it's because you're treating yourselves like machines and not humans, and definitely not like athletes. So elite athletes know, however, that performance isn't about just grinding harder constantly. It's about training smarter. So why are we here today? We're here so that you can learn how to perform like an elite athlete, not just managing pressure, but using it as fuel. And the goal is to be able to master your mindset, protect and optimize your energy, and build a sustainable legal career that's not just successful, but deeply fulfilling. Because peak performance means doing what matters most with clarity and confidence and purpose. So a little bit more about me. I've been a practicing lawyer for over 22 years and a practicing martial artist for over 25. And I've taken all of those lessons from the ring and the cage about mastering the mental game, preparing to execute at the peak of my capacity through strategy, grit, devotion to a larger purpose, and staying composed under pressure. And I've used them in my own legal career, and now I help lawyers apply those lessons in theirs, all without breaking your nose multiple times. So all of the elite athletic concepts that I've learned and used translate pretty perfectly to the boardroom, to the courtroom, and even the office every day. And I've expanded on them since, adding to my degrees in psychology and law a certification as a mental performance mastery coach. And that's what you're going to be learning and start practicing today. So what is the elite athlete mindset? There are 5 key components. The first is growth mindset. A growth mindset was started by Carol Dweck. She coined the term in her book, Mindset. And basically, a growth mindset is the belief that through learning and mentorship and effort, you can improve your capabilities, you can increase your potential, you can learn and grow. A fixed mindset is the belief that your capabilities are what they are. You are given an innate set of attributes, and it is difficult or impossible to ever expand those attributes. What we've found in studying athletes and studying high achievers across fields is that this growth mindset, the belief that you can improve your circumstances and your potential through effort and learning, is the key. It is the foundation to actually achieving those increases in your performance and your potential. So that is the basic foundation. The next is action orientation. There's a great researcher, Steve Magnus, who studied Olympic and world-class athletes for over 20 years. And he found that the component that differentiated good athletes from elite athletes, from champions, was this action orientation. All of the athletes had grit, had determination, had work ethic, had a vision. But the ones that became the champions, the elite of the elite, had this bias towards action. Even when not all of the variables were known, not when they felt absolutely confident or sure, but when the moment came to act, they were biased to act rather than analyze. And that was what allowed them to become elite and champions. Next foundation is present moment focus. This is another thing incredibly important for athletic endeavors, but really any high stakes, high risk endeavor, is that bringing your focus into the present moment, not the past, not just what happened, not the future, what might happen, but here and now, and what you can do in this moment to get closer to your goals. That is a key for performance. That is a key part of that athletic mindset, because our brains, as much as we want to think that they can multitask, they really can't. You can't be thinking of the past and the future and the present simultaneously. You have to choose your focus. And the one that helps you to perform is that present moment focus. What can I do now? Fourth, fundamental foundation is a focus on the process over the outcome. When you are in flow, when you are doing your best work, you are deeply invested in the process of what you're doing, enjoying getting better at your chosen profession. For an athlete for me, it was getting better at fighting. I'm here to become a great fighter, not I'm here to win fights. That's outcome focused, and it's very hard to maintain that motivation. But when your focus is actually the process, that's what you enjoy, that's what you love, that is your goal, to get great at your craft, to be a great lawyer, not just to win cases. That is allowing you to develop long-term sustainable motivation and commitment and enjoyment. We'll talk a little bit more about process focus and progress a little bit later in the deck. And then finally, mission alignment. I call it your MVP. I got that from my mental performance mastery coach, Brian Kane. And what that stands for is mission, vision, and principles. Your mission is your big North Star. Why are you getting up in the morning? And what is it that you would want someone to say about you at your eulogy? What contribution are you hoping to make? That North Star, aligning with that and being able to take action even in small ways every day, is a huge advantage and a key part of the elite athlete mindset that you can contribute now to your elite lawyer mindset. Your vision, that's your shorter term goals. What do you want to accomplish this month, this quarter, this year, these 3 years? That allows you to break that mission down into smaller pieces that are much easier to focus on rather than that big eulogy moment. You can't constantly be looking at that outcome. Again, we're back at the process. So vision is bringing you back into that process. What are your smaller goals? And then principles. What are the core principles that you can embody that allow you to do the work that you need to do to accomplish that vision, to work towards that mission? That's your MVP alignment. And all of those together, that elite athlete mindset, are what I call the fierce agency foundations that allow you to live with unapologetic self-efficacy and agency to do your best work in the most fulfilling way. So I'm going to start off the green light method by taking you back to this moment. I don't know if anyone in the chat wants to take a guess at what that is in my nose, but let me set the scene for you. So I'm showing this to you also not because I love sharing uncomfortable moments like this publicly, but because it's such an important moment when I was applying this green light method, the green light mindset. And it's going to help you understand how you can apply it in your own high stress, uncomfortable moments. So this was July 20th, 2013. I was 36 years old, fighting in the first women's mixed martial arts fight to ever take place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. MMA had only recently been legalized in the state. And in the first round of this fight, I'd lost one of my contacts on my opponent's glove, staring down a jab. That's what I do. So my binocular vision, my depth perception was off. And sometime in the second round, my nose that had been broken before got broken again, maybe the second or third time. Hence, a very creative use of what you see in my nose, that is a tampon. Not my proudest moment, but that's what my coach had to try to stop the bleeding, and that's what we used. This is the moment between the second and the third final round of the fight. And now I knew in my head, I knew the judges and the opponent were all eyeing that blood coming from my nose. And I knew that I needed to come out and continue to dominate the action in the third round like I had in the other two. So in this moment, that look in my face, I'm absorbing the data. I'm absorbing what my coach was telling me. I'm breathing deeply to calm my system, and I'm figuring out my win. WIN. What's important now? What is the next step that I needed to take to get to victory? Once I settled on that, then I told myself these words: green light. Now, why these specific words? Well, green light has a lot of different meanings. Matthew McConaughey has his own green lights. For me, for fighting, what green light means is that is the moment when the leash is off. In training, when you're training to fight, when you're training to do something really dangerous, your goal in training is not to win training. Your goal is to make yourself and each other better. So you're trying techniques, you're using limited power, you're really trying to get technical with it. But in the final lead up to your fight or in your fight, that's when your coach tells you green light. That means you can go at full power. Finally, I still get chills thinking about it. That is your moment to use your utmost, all your capabilities, all of your power, and try to win. So it is a powerful motivator. It is a powerful trigger. And that's how I shifted my mindset and my focus to deliver a fight-winning performance. But here's the really magical part, and this is why I'm showing it to you. I was able to do that in 35 seconds. I went from absorbing the information, figuring out what my win was, doing that deep breath we'll go over later, and telling myself green light, to that picture on the right, ready to go, focused. Yes, there's blood dripping down my face, but I am ready. I'm green light mindset. Why is that such a powerful and effective tool for us to take back that control? And it really comes down to control. It's the heart of this green light mindset. It's consciously deciding to reclaim your autonomy and focus on acting in that present moment, like we talked about before with that elite athlete mindset. We all have power over ourselves and our ability to choose our actions in response to events. Elite athletes practice this daily, and it's a key trait of sustainable high performance, both in sport and in any high-demand profession like law, like ours. Here is what it looks like from a neuroscience perspective. Believing that you have control over your outcomes, which is an internal locus of control, has been shown to increase activation in your prefrontal cortex, your PFC. That's the brain's executive center responsible for planning and decision-making and emotional regulation. This activation enhances cognitive performance and emotional resilience, especially under stress. Now, conversely, over here on the right, we have perceived helplessness or lack of control, external locus of control. These are the hallmarks of analysis paralysis. It activates your default mode network, the DMN, and the amygdala, increasing rumination, anxiety, and indecision. Chronic overanalysis without action can cause decision fatigue, reduce motivation, and impair performance. The antidote to this paralysis is intentional action. Taking even a small step forward engages your brain's dopaminergic reward system, dopamine. We all know that that's a feel-good chemical, and that reinforces a sense of progress and competence. These small wins build momentum and motivation, and they make your future actions easier to initiate. So we talked about this before a little bit. One powerful tool for activating this green light mindset in the moment is a metacognitive starting ritual or trigger. That's that green light phrase that I used in the Pittsburgh cage. Having an intentional ritual, your own green light, activates your reticular activating system, your RAS, and that's your brain's attention gateway. It helps you filter distractions and brings your goals into sharper cognitive focus. Over time, your metacognitive starting ritual, your trigger, becomes an ingrained neural pathway that acts just like a starting gun at a race. It rapidly brings you into a state of present moment focus and action. Green light method is a set of mindset practices that are broader than just your green light starting ritual, but action orientation and present moment focus are essential if you want to shift from reactivity to intentionality, from an external locus of control to an internal one, putting your best effort into action. Lawyers who cultivate this green light mindset are better equipped to handle uncertainty, make decisions under pressure, and move toward meaningful goals without waiting for conditions to be perfect or external validation to arrive. So elite athletes know that mistakes and setbacks are part of the game. They are not proof that you can't win. And when we're doing something high pressure like getting in the courtroom, like motion practice, we need to remember that mistakes and setbacks, while we try to avoid them to the best of our ability, if they happen, they are part of the game. They are not proof that we can't win, and we need to retain that control so that we can get back into action and get back into that high performance and that win. So we train our minds to bounce back fast, to reset, to refocus, and move forward, because the ability to recover and stay in the fight matters more than being perfect at all times. That's resilience in action. The great Billy Briscoe, one of my old school Philly boxing coaches, he used to say that it wasn't the fighter who went into the fight with the best game plan who won. It was the fighter who made the best adjustments during the fight who is going to win the day. Anxiety thrives in that future, and depression and rumination, that thrives in the past. But you thrive in the now. And the faster that you can bring yourself down to that now, the better you're going to be resilient, the more you're going to be able to bounce back quickly. So how do we get better at dealing with stress? What if it's really, really stressful in the moment? We build our resilience muscles, our grit. Angela Duckworth's work on grit is a game changer, and it's not just for her description of what grit looks like, but also because she's shown us the blueprint of how we can increase our own grit. Our mid-cingulate cortex, that's basically our brain's grit muscle. That's our goal-directed effort portion of our brain. And when we undergo controlled stress through stress inoculation, and I'll discuss that a little bit, we are actually building our mid-cingulate cortex and our prefrontal cortex to show that we can survive, overcome, and move on from stress. We train resilience just like we train a muscle. It's in the breakdown that we get stronger, with one caveat that I'll hit shortly. When you train yourself to undergo stress periodically, you are building psychological safety, that self-trust that becomes self-efficacy when you are undergoing challenge stress regularly. It's a cognitive reframe. It's the same one that allows elite athletes, elite lawyers, and you to reframe difficulty as growth. One of the other cognitive reframes I really like comes from Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, really amazing guy. He likes to use the reframe when something bad happens and you're saying, oh no. Train your mind instead to say, good. Oh no, my witness just gave an answer that we did not practice, that was not accurate. Oh no, good. This is my opportunity to guide them back. This is my opportunity to show how that answer actually fits in with the better answer. This is my opportunity to use my advocacy skills, my communication skills to help my assuredly nervous witness come back to the truth, come back to the main point that we need to establish. Oh no, nope, it's good. Good. This is an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to be a great lawyer. So when you do that, when you tell yourself those things in those periodic moments of stress, you are strengthening that MCC, that mid-cingulate cortex, and that is playing a major role in your goal-directed effort, your emotional persistence, and your behavioral flexibility, especially under stress. This region of the brain is critical for transitioning your intentions into sustained action, particularly in the face of obstacles or fatigue or discomfort. High performers, including elite athletes and peak functioning legal professionals, will demonstrate greater MCC activation during high effort tasks, especially when stakes are high or outcomes are uncertain. So here in the legal profession, building the capacity for sustained effort despite setbacks, what Angela Duckworth called grit, is critical. Grit is not merely endurance or determination. It is a cognitive emotional strategy that's rooted in your long-term goal support. And there are ways that you can train your grit apart from just undergoing real life challenges, because every time you undergo something hard for a short period, you are still training that mid-cingulate cortex for self-trust that you can undergo through very difficult things and go on. And you can do that through things like a sauna session, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That is stress on your body. You're undergoing it. You're maintaining calm. You can practice your breathing during it. And then you come outside of it and your brain has learned, hey, I can do hard things. Same things with cold exposure, cold plunges, or high intensity interval training. Even other micro stressors, like just being a novice at something new, like practicing a new language, your daily Duolingo practice of Spanish or French or something new, that's actually training your mid-cingulate cortex and your prefrontal cortex to be great at stress and to be great at moving on and being resilient under pressure. So every time that you train yourself that you can do hard things periodically, that increases your self-efficacy, that increases your self-trust and your ability to be resilient, to have that grit muscle. But the caveat that I was talking about before is that we are talking about periodized stress, not constant unremitting stress. When you have these short or cyclical periods of exposure, that's helping your muscles, your brain MCC grit muscle to improve. But just like we wouldn't constantly train the same muscles, breaking them down in the gym with no rest and expect that we're going to get stronger, it's the same with your brain. You can't constantly be in the breakdown without rest, without recovery, without reset. And so that's why it is not helpful to just be under constant stress. The key to building that grit muscle is periodized, cyclical stress with moments of recovery and rest. Otherwise, it is a recipe for burnout. So when lawyers and high stakes professionals are operating in that always on mode instead, the cognitive load becomes chronic, and that leads to decision fatigue, attention fragmentation, and ultimately, yes, burnout. So always on is a myth. All right. We wear it sometimes like a badge of courage. But like I said at the beginning, we are not machines. We are humans. And sometimes when we're always on, the lights are on, but nobody is home. Or the person who is home is actually impaired. Ignoring these cycles of necessary oscillation. That's a great term that I learned from Dr. Jack Grapple, talking about these cyclical moments of work and rest and recovery. This oscillation of energy expenditure by pushing through fatigue without breaks. If we don't do that oscillation, it results in diminished function of your prefrontal cortex. That's your brain's, again, hub for attention, self-regulation, and decision making. Energy depletion also reduces the activity in your ventral medial prefrontal cortex, and that's the region that's critical for value-based decision-making and impulse control. Cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, also remains elevated under unremitting stress, and that impairs your memory consolidation, your creative problem solving, and your emotional regulation. Not optimal for activating your best performance as a lawyer. So burnout can manifest in lawyers in both physical and emotional ways. In fact, here are some more common signs and symptoms. Physical symptoms. There's fatigue, constant exhaustion, even after a full night's rest, and feeling drained throughout the day. Sleep disturbances, difficulty falling asleep, could be difficulty staying asleep, or feeling unrested, even if you do get enough hours of sleep. You can also experience frequent illness, increased susceptibility to things like colds or headaches or other physical ailments due to a weakened immune function from that increased cortisol and constant stress. There's constant pain and tension also possible, unexplained headaches, back pain, neck pain, muscle tension. A lot of people have that TMJ pain. It's all from unremitting stress in stressful situations without that rest and recovery. On the psychological or emotional forum, it can be cynicism. Cynicism is a result of burnout and negative attitude, feeling disconnected from work, a sense of detachment, or a growing belief that your job is more meaningless than you really want it to be. You can be irritable and frustrated, overreacting to small issues and feeling agitated or overwhelmed by everyday tasks. Also, a lack of motivation. You have decreased enthusiasm for things that you used to enjoy in your work, resulting in lower productivity and engagement. It might also lead to feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not performing well enough, even when the evidence shows otherwise. And that can also spiral into a decreased sense of self-worth when you really identify with the quality of your work as who you are. Can also lead to emotional exhaustion, feeling mentally and emotionally drained with little energy for your personal life or outside activities. On the cognitive side, you can have difficulty concentrating, focusing, or making decisions, often feeling sort of mentally foggy or even forgetful. This actually decreases your memory. When you are in burnout, forgetfulness or lapses in remembering tasks or details are really common. Recognizing these kinds of signs early is a key for addressing burnout before it becomes overwhelming. And often what you need is a combination of rest and support and recovering your balance in order to get back on track. Because when you don't, the burnout leads to these behavioral symptoms as well of actual reduced performance, a noticeable drop in your work quality, attention to detail, or ability to meet deadlines, isolation, withdrawing from your colleagues, from your clients, or even social interactions in favor of working alone or just avoiding everyone else. And then procrastination, delaying tasks, making excuses, or avoiding difficult assignments. So besides caring about our personal health and well-being, because burnout is not in your head. It is real symptoms. It is a real syndrome. besides caring for our health and well-being, why else should we care about burnout? Because if you wouldn't accept a lawyer in your office or you yourself doing work while impaired by something like alcohol, then why would we accept doing work while we're impaired by this burnout syndrome, where we have difficulty concentrating? We have impaired decision making, decreased memory, reduced performance, procrastination, and deadline avoidance. These can all affect our competence. Now, under the California rules of professional conduct, this is the only state that has this in the black letter of their actual rule, but we'll talk about who else has that as well. But their definition of competence includes competence in any legal service shall mean to apply the learning and skill and, here's the key, mental, emotional, and physical ability reasonably necessary for the performance of such service. So even though it's the only jurisdiction in California that hard codes that mental, physical, and emotional language in the black letter rule, multiple other states put that same trio of abilities squarely in their official comments to this rule correlate. That's Texas, Wisconsin, North Carolina, New York, Ohio, and Tennessee all specifically mention mental, physical, and emotional competence in their comments as their definition of what it means to be a fully competent practicing lawyer. Other states, Georgia, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Utah, Vermont, and Wyoming, they rely on the ABA model rule wording. And so concerns about impairment really only appear in their versions of Rule 1.16A2, which is declining or withdrawing when the lawyer's physical or mental condition really materially impairs their representation. But what we want to do is we want to be our fully confident self every day at our best capability. So taking care of ourselves and preventing burnout or recovering from burnout is not just because it's important for our wellness, and that would be enough by itself. But we also want to make sure that we are complying with our professional responsibilities of competence. But let's go back beyond the intellectual. Let's make it a little bit personal now. Maybe let your colleagues know in the comments, because I think you're going to see there's a lot of people who have ever experienced any of these symptoms of burnout, and instead of seeing them as burnout, saw them as some sort of personal failing or weakness. Because we have this ingrained culture of being super people in law. We sometimes wear our burnout as a badge of honor, but really they are just battle scars. And what we need to do is recognize that burnout is not in our heads. It is a legitimate failure of a system, not a failure of your person. I'm wondering if we have any comments in the chat just to see. There we go. I'm not seeing any. I hope that you communicate with each other, because in my last webinar, we did a real-time poll here, and it was about 80% of the participants had experienced one or more of these symptoms and thought somehow it was a personal weakness or a personal failing instead of this actual syndrome of burnout. So what is burnout really? It is not a personal failure. And the belief that you can just push through if you're tough enough, that's bull. That is absolutely untrue. I'm pretty darn tough. In fact, I actually competed in Las Vegas for a promotion that was literally named Tough Enough. And yet still, that picture on the right, I still found myself in burnout after being in hyper growth building mode as the head of legal in an entertainment tech startup that I loved. It was just about to become a unicorn through a Series C funding round from SoftBank. But why did this happen? Because far from being about your toughness, burnout is a human response to a system failure. I knew what the system to avoid burnout was supposed to look like, but I wasn't following those systems because I still thought that I was the super tough exception to the rule. But that's not the truth. The truth is important, so I'm going to say it again. Burnout is a human response to a system failure. And you can build and execute better systems. That's why we're here today. Burnout will come for all of us if we burn the candle at both ends for long enough without restoring our energy. So here's where we are going to learn how you can prevent and heal burnout for the rest of your practice years using this green light mindset. And that's why we're about to start talking about energy management. It's a topic that is so impactful that it eclipses time management in terms of its outsized effect on your performance. Because the truth is you cannot out-hustle burnout. Always on, that's an illusion. It's a tech bro fallacy. It is a recipe for burnout. So don't fall for it. You have to incorporate a system of rest and recovery into your high performance life, or you will discover it too. So let's talk a little bit more about me. Here's an analogy from athletics again to show how important energy management really is. So I was training for one of my very first fights, and my right elbow had been hurting me for a while. It was a little bit swollen. So I went to the doctor, and he diagnosed me with tendonitis. I said, oh, okay, great. So I went back to the gym, immediately started working out again. I was doing pull-ups. I was telling my coach that my elbow hurt, and he said, didn't you go to the doctor? I said, yeah. And he said, well, what is it? I said, I've got tendonitis. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, are you an asshole? And I was taken aback. And he said, how do you treat tendonitis? I said, well, you put ice on it, you rest it. He said, you rest it. And what are you doing? And I said, not resting it. He's like, so I'm going to ask you again. Are you an asshole? Because only someone who is would do the exact opposite of what they know is scientifically required to heal the thing that is keeping them from their best performance. Tendonitis is inflammation of a tendon. Burnout is basically inflammation of your brain, of your stress handling system. And if you think that outworking that is the answer, you might be the A word. Nobody wants that. So let's talk about how we avoid it with energy management, much better than time management. Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz, in their book, The Power of Fully Engagement, they argue that sustainable high performance isn't a function of time management, but energy management across 4 interdependent domains: the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. They found that elite athletes and high-performing professionals consistently alternate periods of intense output with periods of intentional recovery, again, calling that oscillation, like Dr. Jack Groppel, creating a rhythm that mirrors your body's natural biological cycles. It's just like breathing in, breathing out. We couldn't exhale in perpetuity or we would die. You need to inhale. You need to recover in order to be able to function. Now, this kind of performance rhythm is underpinned by the ultradian rhythm. We've heard of the circadian rhythm. The ultradian rhythm, that's how your brain functions. It's a neurological and physiological cycle that occurs in our brains approximately every 90 to 120 minutes. During each of these ultradian cycles, our brain shifts from high-frequency alertness to lower-frequency rest, creating optimal windows to do our deep cognitive work, followed by brief recovery periods. These short recovery periods can be as short as 15 or 20 minutes after every 90 to 120 minutes of focused work, max. Then when you take these mental breaks, it's important that you use something like physical movement or breath work or reflection, stepping fully away from your desk, from your computer, from your screens, so that you can reactivate these areas and improve both your self-awareness and your executive function, as well as recovering your energy. Work with brain's natural rhythms instead of against them. There's other ways that you can fuel that fight. Besides managing your energy, you can actually give yourself additional motivation, additional energy through these two methodologies, authenticity and glimmers. These help you create long-term sustainable energy for your practice. Now, why does authenticity make you a better performer? What is happening in your brain and your body when you're aligned and showing up as your real authentic self? And how can you leverage authenticity to perform at your best under pressure, in leadership, in the courtroom, in relationships, in life? Well, when you're operating from a place of authenticity, meaning your actions, your decisions, and your presence are aligned with what you truly value and your strengths and identity, you are going to experience a lower cognitive load. And here's why. When you're trying to perform through a mask, essentially trying to perform as someone you think others want you to be, you're burning mental energy. And that takes you away from allowing you to use your full mental energy on the task in front of you. On impression management, you're wasting energy. On suppressing your true instincts, you're wasting energy. The neuroscience term here is executive function overload. Too much bandwidth is going towards your self-regulation, and that leaves less energy left for your high-level cognitive and even motor performance. A 2011 study in the journal Emotion by Gross and John showed that emotional suppression actually impairs our working memory. It reduces our connection with others, and it increases stress. You're literally performing with one hand tied behind your back when you're not being authentic. On the flip side, when you are in alignment, your default mode network and your salience network are working in harmony. You can focus and you can flow and adapt more easily. Self-congruence also triggers your reward pathways, again, dopamine release, and that reinforces your confidence and your action. So in short, being your authentic self is efficient. It is energizing and it boosts resilience. Now, what about the second energy hack here? Let's go back to your reticular activating system, your brain's attention gateway. That's what helps filter your distractions and bring your goals into sharper cognitive focus. It's called cognitive salience. So what we notice becomes our experience. Does anyone know what a glimmer is? I don't know. It's a term that was started by a social worker, I believe in the early 2000s. A glimmer is basically the opposite of a trigger. A trigger is something that we see, hear, smell, do that triggers us into a bad place. It sends us in an emotional spiral. A glimmer is the opposite. A glimmer is a moment of calm or peace or joy. And when we notice the glimmers in our life, when we consciously focus on that, that's telling our reticular activating system that that is important, that is salient. And what that reticular activating system will then do is it will look for more of the things that we have said are important. So it will look for more moments of joy and peace and comfort. And these are simple things. It can be the first sip of a really good cup of coffee. It can be the way the light looks on the creek that you're walking by, or a bird lifting up, or just hearing the laughter of your children. These are all glimmers. And the more that you notice them, the more that you tell your brain that this is important, the more you will find them. What we experience, what we notice becomes our life, becomes our lived experience. That is going to increase the amount of joy and contentment moments that you have in your life, really enjoying the journey, enjoying the process, and that is fuel for your fight. So back to those four levels of optimizing your energy from Tony Lohr and Jack Schwartz. We are going to talk about physical capacity. That's pretty obvious, right? That's being able to physically sit there and do your work, stand up, talk to people, go to the court, all of those things. It is important to maintain our physical capacity because without it, everything else is not going to be running well. The legal athlete optimal performance model that I've developed is incorporating all 4 of these frameworks, drawing not just on Lohr and Schwartz's work, but even, I'm sure you've heard of this, Abraham Maslow's revised hierarchy of needs, where our top need is not just self-actualization, but self-transcendence through purpose, through a bigger mission in our lives. This also incorporates Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and Angela Duckworth's work on grit. That's core neuroscience of self-efficacy and energy optimization. So we've talked about physical capacity, that foundation to the body's ability to generate energy, strength, and stamina to meet your cognitive and emotional demands. Then we've got emotional capacity. That's built through practices that allow you to reduce your chronic stress and enhance your affect, your emotional regulation. Emotional capacity is essential for maintaining your composure and your optimism and making sure that you are maintaining your interpersonal effectiveness. In fact, regulating emotional arousal through breath work, through glimmers, otherwise known as gratitude, through social connection can activate your parasympathetic nervous system and strengthen your vagus nerve tone that reduces your amygdala hyperactivity and enhances your recovery from stress. Now, mental capacity is a little bit different. This is focusing on your attention, your cognitive ability, and decision-making under pressure. Tools like the physiological sigh that I'll go over next, and focus reset rituals, and signal light awareness that we'll go over. Those are all going to help you strengthen the prefrontal cortex and improve your working memory, your emotional control, and your present moment focus. This is a key in order to allow you to do your best work, your best cognitive work. And then finally, we have your spiritual capacity. This is the pinnacle of this performance period, just like it is the pinnacle in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Spiritual capacity is defined with a deep alignment with your mission, your vision, and your principles, with your MVP. Again, that alignment supports your purpose-driven action and allows your intrinsic motivation to increase, your long-term resilience, and is your ultimate performance-enhancing advantage. A practical tool to align your performance with this biological reality is doing what I call a daily energy audit. It's just a moment where you give yourself structured reflection time to see where is your energy being spent or lost or replenished. This will help you identify energy leaks such as emotional reactivity or too much multitasking, misaligned work, and it allows you to deliberately design habits or new routines that can help you plug those gaps. Lawyers can benefit really greatly from building structured routines that synchronize your natural energy, those ultradian rhythms, and reinforce your focus. And central to that process, again, is that reticular activating system, your brain mechanism responsible for filtering what's not important and focusing on what is. So, how do we identify what that purpose is, what that MVP is? So, as I mentioned, your mission that's what you want on your eulogy. Okay. That's not just, hey, George worked a lot. You want someone to say, George really helped people. George really cared about people. Or Georgia. We all want someone to say something meaningful about us. And that's what our mission is. Our vision, those are the shorter term goals. Again, what are we doing in the next month, the next 3 months, the next 6 or year or 3 years to get us closer to embodying that mission? And then our principles. What are the personal core principles that I'm going to use that are going to set me up for success, to accomplish that vision, It turns your purpose into practice. Now, I think I've sent a handout where you can do your own personalized, customized MVP system in a very easy and simple way, as well as guide you through an energy audit. And it's one of the most helpful and simple ways that I've found to start incorporating this kind of devotion and habits into your system, morning and evening, non-negotiable practices that should also be a part of your handout. So what does purpose look like in practice? It is your ultimate renewable energy force. It's not a fluffy idea. It is not about the inspirational posters or the mission statements that no one is reading. Purpose is a real, measurable driver of success, of focus, energy, resilience, and performance. And here's why purpose outperforms motivation alone. There's a big difference between being motivated by short-term goals and being fueled by a bigger why. If you haven't read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, it's a great book. I definitely highly recommend it. Here's what the research shows. People who are just chasing goals, like hitting a number or winning an award or getting a promotion, will perform pretty well until things get hard, stressful, or messy. When obstacle shows up, short-term motivation often collapses, but when a person has a clear purpose, a strong internal reason why they're doing what they do, they are staying focused, they push through setbacks, and they're able to perform at a higher level for longer. A study published in the Journal of Research and Personality found that people with a stronger sense of purpose had greater perseverance and better emotional recovery after failures compared to people driven only by external goals. Simply put, purpose makes you harder to break. Let's think about Rocky for a minute. I hope there's enough people here who have seen the original Rocky movie. Again, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. What was Rocky's purpose in that original movie? It wasn't winning. He had a big epiphany. He realized there's no way that he could beat Apollo Creed at his level of skill at that time. So what was his goal instead? He wanted to go the distance. He wanted to be able to stand up in every single round of that fight because that is something that no other boxer had ever done. That was his purpose. That was what he accomplished. And that was what he was talking about when he said, "Yo, Adrian, I did it." It wasn't that he won the fight. He lost the fight at the end of Rocky. But he went the distance. He accomplished that bigger mission, that bigger purpose. And that's the kind of motivation that will help you get up off the canvas too and continue on to complete your mission. It's treating your energy like a renewable resource through that purpose. And that requires your active investment and your strategic recovery. Attorneys can significantly enhance your clarity, your stamina, and your effectiveness without sacrificing your well-being in the process. In short, mission-aligned action makes for happy brains. Research in positive psychology and neurobiology has showed us that meaning making activates dopamine and oxytocin. Oxytocin is our bonding hormone. Those pathways are enhancing our social bonding, fostering perseverance through adversity. Purpose-driven individuals also experience greater dopaminergic activation. Again, dopamine, that happy chemical, which supports our motivation, as well as that oxytocin release for our social bonding and collaboration, key in our profession. These neurochemical changes are particularly valuable in a high-pressure, high-stakes legal environment where emotional detachment and burnout are so common. It is your neuroscience hack to beat burnout. So how do we do this? Well, let's go back to that process orientation, process over perfection, and keeping your mission in focus helps you persevere, not just because you have a meaningful reason to seek a particular outcome. It helps you appreciate the steps, the process that you need to take in order to reach that outcome, to act in service and devotion to that mission. If the only reason that you show up is the day that that verdict is read, it is going to be a lot harder to show up every day to do the work that your clients are counting on you to do, that the justice system also depends on you to do. But if you're there out of love for the law, for justice, for service, even just for the intellectual challenge of being the best professional that you can, showing up every day to put in your best is so much easier, particularly if there are days here and there where that ultimate verdict does not go your way. But if you show up because it's the process, it's the learning, it's the art that you love, it's not just the outcome, then you've tapped into your intrinsic motivation, and that's a powerful commitment and performance enhancer. Love of process is the most powerful performance tools that we often overlook because it's surprisingly simple. It's tied to progress. Harvard researchers Teresa Amabile and Stephen Kramer studied over 12,000 daily work diaries from professionals across industries. And what they found was this: what motivates people most, even more than money and recognition or status, is making meaningful progress in their work. In fact, 76% of the people studies said that their best day involved hitting a milestone, solving a problem, or just moving forward slightly in their work. Even small wins create a great sense of momentum, and when those are seen and celebrated, the effect multiplies. So it's not just about giant breakthroughs. It's about small wins, tiny forward motion, one step, one task, one clear sign that you're moving in the right direction. That's the progress principle. And here's why it matters. Even minor progress in meaningful work is going to lead to higher motivation, better mood, stronger problem solving, and deeper engagement both that day and the next. In fact, it creates a feedback loop that builds your momentum, your focus, and your confidence, and keeps your attention here, now, in the present, the same place where you're working on that process, the same place where you are finding that flow in your work. And when you fall in love with the process, you are unlocking that elite athlete, that champion's mindset, just like professional athletes do. Mastery doesn't come immediately. So if you want to be elite in your field, then you have to do more than just tolerate discomfort and failure and hard things. You have to learn to lean in, to love the hard. Mike Tyson said that discipline is doing what you hate to do, but doing it like you love it. And that's what you have to do to be the best. But it's a very Mike Tyson thing to say. I think when you frame what you're doing more as devotion to yourself, devotion to your success and health and happiness and progress, that's when you actually do fall in love with doing what is hard. Again, neuroscience is backing this up. Every time you do hard things, that stress inoculation, even tasks that you dislike, you're strengthening your mid-cingulate cortex, your mental grit muscle, the brain area that helps you manage motivation, make decisions, and handle both pain and reward. So when you learn to love the hard and embrace that growth mindset, find fascination instead of frustration with the process of turning obstacles into stepping stones, that oh no into good, that's when you've made the champion's choice. But don't just take it from me. And here you can see in my face, I'm really enjoying the process during the fight there. You have to love the grind. So here's a couple of clips. I hope that the sound plays. If the sound doesn't play, there is captions in these clips too. But the first clip you're going to hear is from my friend, UFC veteran fighter, Matt Steamrolla Frivola. I used to train with him in Long Island. A few months ago, I sat down with him. Well, first I stood up with him. We sparred a couple rounds in the cage for my series, Jess Gets Around. And then we sat down to talk about the mental performance aspects that allow him to take on the best in the world. And so here's what he talked about with loving the grind.
If you could think of one technique that you've used or that you rely on to get you through training camp, to keep you performing at your best under pressure, what do you think the one thing you keep coming back to in your head is?
Appreciate the grind. One day when you're an older guy and you can't push that hard, appreciate the grind because it's beautiful and just pushing yourself to the limits, seeing what you're truly capable of. It won't last forever, so just appreciate that moment.
That present moment focus, appreciating the process, loving the hard, that was key. Now, the day after I sparred with my friend Matt, I also sparred with undefeated professional MMA fighter Pumi Nakuda. And he didn't see what his teammate Matt had said the day before, but notice how starkly similar what he's talking about is. Again, I hope that the sound works. If not, there are captions.
How do you get so focused and ready to perform at that moment?
I just feel like that's where I belong. Some people, like when they see love at first sight, they think about a person. For me, it's when I saw a ring. Be in the moment, do the things that I've seen, people who I wanted to grow up and be like, guys who inspire me, seeing what they do and just wanting to be in that same position as well. It makes us that way. When I am there, I don't have to fake it. I don't have to be somebody else. Whereas some people might be scared of the moment and might be, overtaken by the moment. I live in the moment. You know what I mean? So that's why I feel so comfortable in that.
Again, loving that grind, being in the moment, really, really taking advantage of that process focus. So what are some of the tools that we can use to bring us back to that present moment? We know that life happens, and just like athletes, we're not always going to be in our ideal headspace to perform. We all get stressed or nervous. We get pulled in 10 different directions, distracted by other events or other people, other demands on our attention and our time. So what do we do when that happens to get our brain back to our optimal performance states? Here's a really simple tool to do this. At any moment, our internal signal light is either red, yellow, or green. When we're in a red state, we're experiencing significant stress, overwhelm, or strong emotions. Our cognitive processing becomes foggy. Our executive function, again, is impaired. We're losing clarity on what matters most in the moment. Decision-making and performance suffer because we are reactive instead of intentional. When we're in yellow, we may feel unsettled, experiencing some emotional interference or distraction, but we're still partially able to engage, just not at full focus or effectiveness. Our attention is divided and we're not fully aligned with our goals or our highest priorities. But then we're in green. Our green state is our high performance brain online. We're calm, we're clear and focused. We can think strategically, respond intentionally, and execute effectively. In this state, we're positioned to achieve our outcomes best, to show up as effective leaders, effective advocates, and be fully present for both our clients and our colleagues. So here's how you use those signal lights in a 3-step reset. First, check in with yourself and see, where is your internal signal light? Are you in green? Are you all systems go? Are you in yellow? Are you losing it? Or red? You are out of the game. How do you reset then? The first tool is a physiological sigh. If you find you're in yellow or in red, we're going to use the physiological sigh. It's the simplest breathing technique. Andrew Huberman does a great demonstration of this on his YouTube video. But all it is 2 breaths in through the nose and 1 long breath out through your mouth. I'll demonstrate once quickly, but it is the fastest reset for your nervous system, for your vagal system. It's a deep breath in, extra little breath at the top. Make sure your lungs are fully inflated, and then long, slow breath out. I like to count for at least 8, a count of 8. Again, all internal. You don't have to make it as obvious as I just did in order to demonstrate to you, but this is something that you can do in a matter of seconds. I like to do up to 3 of these physiological sighs, and the difference that it makes in my level of calm, my level of focus is dramatic. So that's step 2 in your 3-step reset. Step 1, am I in red or yellow? Okay, if I am, 2, go to your physiological sigh. Deep breath, just like I did in that green light moment and that corner stool. Deep breath, physiological sigh, and then step 3, what's my win? What's important now? What is the small next step that I need to take in order to accomplish my goals? And then once I've identified that, time for your metacognitive starting ritual, time for that trigger. That's when you tell yourself, green lights. Because once you do that, once you develop that habit, telling yourself, as soon as I say green light, I have to go, you are going to develop that neural pathway until it becomes automatic. You're going to use this 3-step reset. What are my signal lights? Deep breath in, deep breath out, long, slow, deep breath out. And then what's my win? What's important now? Identify the next small step, not every step, the next small step, and then green light, go. So that, in a nutshell, is your green light method briefcase. We've talked about why it's important. We've talked about burnout being a system failure, not a personal failure. And these are the systems that you can start to implement to make your systems work for you instead of against you. You start with that growth mindset, the belief that with learning and practice, you can improve your situation, your circumstances, and your performance. Then you've got your action orientation, being willing to take that leap, even with imperfect readiness, even with imperfect knowledge, in order to get to that next step and the next step and the next step after that. Then it's that present moment focus. You heard the pro athletes from the UFC talking about this. Focusing on the now. What are you doing in this present moment to help yourself move forward? Don't worry about what just happened. Don't worry and obsess about what might happen. What are you doing in the now to get those goals moving forward? Focusing on that process over the outcome, falling in love with the hard, falling in love with what you are doing every day. And then that mission alignment. How is what I'm doing every day helping me, even in small ways, make progress towards my bigger vision, towards my ultimate mission? And how am I embodying my core principles in my life that are supporting my progress towards that vision, towards that mission? And then finally, in that briefcase, you've got your 3-step reset to bring yourself back, because we all lose it sometimes. If you are in one of those red or yellow zones, use that 3-step reset to get back to green. What are your signal lights? Physiological sigh to get your nervous system like under control, like a runaway carriage. Get those reins, get those horses stopped from running away. And then identify your win. What's important now? Tell yourself green lights and go. So the last thing that I want to leave you with, and I know we're a little bit over, but I think it's really important, is this concept of the power of today plus today. This perspective shift has a major impact on the way you approach success and happiness. And I'm going to share this true story with you about an unexpected interaction in my neighborhood park. The sound isn't really important. I've got this video here. I'll play for you so you know this is real. I am not making it up. There's one day on my morning walk in my favorite local park, I saw this little old man approaching me on the path. And I could hear him saying things in the distance. And as he got closer, I could hear him calling out to people as they passed by. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but he was smiling and his tone was happy. So I was not alarmed. And as he got closer and I continued to walk towards him, he locked eyes with me. He smiled wide and he called out, "Happy birthday to you." I really didn't know how to respond to this. I was a little confused, but I was charmed because he was just beaming positivity, and it was not my birthday that day. But he continued on from there with this melodic greeting. Happy birthday to you. Blessings to you. Happy day. Good morning. Good morning. Blessings to you. Happy birthday. I didn't know what to make of that, so I just kind of went, good morning to him on the way back. But it stuck in my brain, and I was so delighted to have that interaction. I didn't know what it really meant. Later in that day, it clicked. I was reviewing some high performance strategies for a coaching session, and I saw this quote from my mental performance master coach, Brian Kane. This is the quote here at the bottom. Champions commit 100% to the day's goal, to the here and now, because they know that their career and life will be the sum of their todays. The sum of their todays. That was the light bulb moment for me, and I finally understood what the old man was saying to me. He wasn't mistaken. He was wise. He was generously reminding me and everyone that he met on that park path that today is your birthday. Today is a fresh start. It is a new opportunity to make choices that shape our future. And that's the mindset shift that I want to share with you today. Your success and your happiness aren't waiting for you at some distant milestone in the future. They are built one day at a time, starting today. Today is your birthday, so treat it like it. Green lights. Let's go.
Jess, thank you so much for that presentation. We really appreciate your insights. All right, we can now go ahead and move on to questions. So as I mentioned, there are a few in the queue. I know we're a little bit over time, so we'll only take a few. But the first person, this is from Paula. They ask, if it's possible, could you address any effects of vicarious trauma in your experience kind of relating to the neuroscience that you mentioned?
Sure. I will I will leave most of that for actual behavioral scientists and professionals dealing with the issue of trauma and trauma-informed lawyering. I have a great podcast with a trauma practitioner on the Legal Athlete podcast that talks about trauma-informed lawyering, where she explains a lot more about what we can do to help our clients. But the issue of vicarious trauma, that's very common. We're dealing with very hard, difficult things. We're seeing graphic pictures sometimes of horrible things that have happened. And the best advice that I can give you with that is that it's not weakness. It is a natural human response to be affected by these things. And so the best general non-behavioral scientist advice I can give you is to be calm and empathetic with yourself. You know, if a friend was going through a trauma, how would you deal with them? How would you advise them? Be kind to yourself. It may help sometimes to talk to a friend. It may help sometimes to talk to a professional about dealing with the trauma that you have to slog through every day in a very intellectual way so that you can provide the best representation for your client. So the best thing that I can say is take care of yourself, give yourself time to rest, recover, to move your body, get your systems in order. Sometimes movement is the absolute best stress relief that we can have. And that can be as simple as taking a walk, taking a few deep breaths, or journaling so that you can get in touch with how am I really feeling? And then you could communicate that to a close friend, to a partner, to a professional, because they're going to be able to help guide you through more techniques to handle this than I can. But the thing that I can say is that it is legitimate. It is very common, and it is very human And so just be kind and compassionate to yourself, and give yourself the time to deal with that, without just trying to pass over it, because it's gonna stay there and resonate regardless. So be kind to yourself, and try to give yourself the recovery that you need and the resources that you need to deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight, Jess. Our next question relates to workplace culture. So it's an anonymous attendee, but they ask, how should I handle the situation if my boss or other people at my company don't allow me to leave my desk or step away to stretch my legs, get that movement, that breathing time that you're talking about? What would you recommend in that situation?
Okay. Um, well, we're gonna take punching your boss in the throat off the table. That is the MMA response. That is not appropriate for the office. It is unreasonable. I will say that it is an unreasonable culture to never give anyone an opportunity to take a quick break. It is counter scientific too, like we just went over about the way that our brains and our bodies actually work most productively. If it is not safe for you to leave your physical office, then do the best that you can to just stand up from your desk and go to the other side of it where the monitor isn't. Take little walking paths from wall to wall, or do some squats in the air, jumping jacks. Pretend that you're jumping a rope. You don't even have to have a rope. You can pretend that you're jumping a rope. Or here's one that I love, is putting on a little bit of music. It can be even earbuds so no one else can hear, and giving yourself a little boogie. All right. Anything to move and get yourself out of that mode of just always constantly being on. Your brain needs that break. You're going to work much better if you give it to yourself. If you can't physically leave your office, I would reconsider my work environment and seeing if I can have a conversation. If that's not safe, that's not possible for you given your circumstances, always be cognizant of that. But there are things that you can do even inside your office to give yourself that mental and movement break, and really be a more productive person with that restorative moment.
Thank you, Jess. Those are really helpful tips. Our last question for today is, what would you say is an effective, simple format for a personal energy audit?
Sure. I If I haven't given the worksheet with the energy audit, I will circulate that to Nina and Justia right after this. But basically what it is thinking of those 4 areas of your life: your physical, emotional, mental, and purpose or spiritual. Just think about those aspects of your life and see where do you think you're leaking energy. So on the physical, is it, I haven't taken a walk in weeks, or I haven't been to the gym to do anything. That might be a physical energy leak. You might want to think about, what are some habits that I can start to incorporate to help myself feel better and feel more healthy physically. Emotionally, if there's a particular relationship in your life that is drawing a lot of energy and it's not negative, then you might want to think, all right, how can I improve that relationship? Or if it's someone that you don't need to interact with, maybe that's a person that you don't interact with, and that's a way to cut off that kind of energy leak. We sometimes allow too many distractions, too many energy leaks into our life, and we have to regain that internal locus of control that, like Taylor Swift says, our energy is expensive and it's not for everyone. So sometimes if they can't afford your energy, by adding to it in a positive way, the best thing is to let them pass by that shop. Mental, also the energy audit, are there times when I'm losing focus? Am I going past that 90 to 2 hours session of deep work and find that I'm losing focus? That might be an energy leak. You can retrain your habits for that. And then spiritual purpose. Have I lost a sense of why I'm doing this? Do I not have any clear goals for myself for the next short term or longer term? So if we don't have that alignment, that might be a place to add your conversation or your concentration. So that's a quick energy audit. way to go through it, and hopefully we'll have the handout for you as well to guide you through that.
Thank you so much, Jess. And yes, if you are interested in that handout, it is available for download. You can go to the webinar page, log into your Connect account, and then it will be available. It'll be right next to the title in the description box. You can download them there. Thank you so much for your insights, Jess. We really appreciate you taking the time to answer our audience questions. And thank you all so much for submitting your questions. We love when you all participate and really value it. We want to thank you all so much for joining us for another Justia webinar. As mentioned earlier today, if you are interested in a great tool to enhance your professional presence, our Justia Lawyer Directory can do just that. If you haven't claimed your free profile yet, you can go to lawyers.justia.com to get started. With millions of monthly visits, it's a powerful way to connect with the leads that you're wanting. You can also get even more exposure through our Justia Premium placements to allow you to show up above organic listings. And you can learn about those by going to marketing.justia.com. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you all so much for joining.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next video.